Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to episode number 138 of the WP Builds podcast. This episode's entitled, Are We Happy with How We Manage Tasks? It was published on Thursday the 25th of July 2019. My name's Nathan Wrigley from pictureandword.co.uk, a small web development agency based in the north of England, and I'll be joined in a few minutes by David Wormsley from davidwormsley.com so that we can have our regular discussion, which we like to do every couple of weeks. But before that, a couple of things. If you wouldn't mind heading over to the wpbuilds.com website /subscribe, you will get to a page full of all sorts of ways of keeping in touch with what we do over on WP Builds. So, for example, there's a couple of email lists you can sign up to be notified about these podcast episodes, but also any deals that crop up in the WordPress community. I send you a little short email to let you know about those. We've also got the options on there to subscribe on your podcast player or join our thriving Facebook group of 2,100 people all talking about WordPressy things. And there's links to things like our Facebook channel as well. A couple of other things to remember. If you go over to wpbuilds.com /deals, you'll find surprisingly, our deals page. And on there, you're going to find a whole load of coupon codes for WordPress plugins and themes, etc. It's a bit like Black Friday, but every day of the week. We've added a few recently, so perhaps go and check it out. If you're in the market for any WordPress products, you might be able to save yourself a few pennies over there. And wpbuilds.com /webinars if you want to keep in touch with all the stuff that we're doing over at WP Builds regarding webinars. Lastly, wpbuilds.com /advertise if you would like to advertise your product or service on the WP Builds podcast, a bit like the Page Builder framework have. Do you use a page builder to create your websites? The Page Builder framework is a mobile responsive and lightning fast WordPress theme that works with Beaver Builder, Elementor, Breezy and other page builders. With its endless customization options in the WordPress customizer, it's the perfect fit for you or your agency. So go to wp-pagebuilderframework.com today. And we do thank all of our sponsors who help support and put on the WP Builds podcast. Okay, today the podcast is called Are We Happy with How We Manage Tasks? This whole thing was inspired by a poll that I put in the WP Builds Facebook group asking if people are like me, because I obsess about getting one thing finished before I can move on to the next. I find it very hard to flit between tasks. So I put a poll out with some options, and this whole episode was inspired by that. We had lots and lots of feedback, and so we do mention quite a few people in our Facebook group. So maybe you'll get a mention if you participated in that poll. But it's just a nice discussion about how we manage whether or not we can flip from one thing to another, whether we can focus at all, or whether we just focus on one thing. I really hope that you enjoy it.
Hello, this discussion we're calling, Are We Ever Happy with How We Manage Tasks? Nathan, you probably should introduce this properly because you started this as a post, didn't you, on the WP Builds Facebook group?
Yes, that's true. I'll probably link to it so that you can click on it and look at what the poll was if you're in our group. And essentially, I can't even remember really what it was, but I posted a poll with only 3 options because I kind of was wondering if I had a bit of a personality flaw. And the personality flaw revolves around the fact that I really kind of struggle to move on from one task to another, to be able to flit between things. So, for example, if I begin a task, I really like to see it through to the end. And I get quite obsessed with the beginning and then just working until it's finished, to the point where all sorts of ordinary things get chucked out the window and I don't do them, like eating. I'll just keep working until it's finished and then suddenly look up and 12 hours have gone and I haven't put a particle of food anywhere near my mouth. And so I was wondering, is this normal? So I said, when I start on a task, I get fixated upon it. I find it very hard to break off and to complete other tasks until that one is done. There are so many reasons why I would like to change this, but I wonder if in the end it's a good quality. And then I posted 3 possible outcomes in this poll. And the one which got the most votes was I struggle to stay on a task for any length of time. So that's kind of the exact opposite of me. That was the winner. And then kind of joint second, really, with very similar number of votes, was the one that I plumped for, which was I have to finish what I'm working on before I move on. And then slightly in the lead, but only by 1 or 2 votes, was I can go from one task to another and it's completely fine. So that really was what prompted all of this. And we're going to talk around that. And it's going to be a very clumsy talk, I think. We've written down loads of
Yes.
ideas, but trying to make them coherent is going to be a little bit difficult. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll sum up, really, I guess, what people said to us. So
Yeah.
Adam Lacey kicked us off, didn't he? And he was echoed. There was Nick Gulick, I think,
Yep.
Kyle Van Duzen and Mark. Well, all were pretty much the same in the sense that they can get fixed when the interest and the motivation is there, but it's going to totally depend on the task that they're doing.
Yeah. And I think, sadly, I wish that I had the capability. Once you've set a poll in Facebook, you can't, as soon as it started to receive results, you can't then go and adapt it. And I selected nobody can add any other options. Again, was a very stupid thing to do because it would have been nice to put those in. But yeah, I think there's a bit of that in my answer as well. You know, it really does depend on the task. So those people can all get fixated just like me. So long as there's motivation and the task is of some interest, yeah.
I think there's probably there's a truism there, isn't there? There was. I thought it was interesting. Some points were really good because just reminded me of things like Sunil. I don't know how you say his surname. Is it Posse?
I was going to say Sunil Poss, but maybe Sunil can actually phonetically write out how to pronounce his surname, and then we'll know.
And he's a developer, so he kind of. That's the thing he likes, solving problems. So he's kind of going to stick on task, isn't he?
Yeah, and I'm sure that capability is probably there's a certain benefits to it. There's obviously drawbacks. In my case, you don't eat enough, but the ability to sort of stay with something until you've actually got to the end is good. Now, obviously, there's going to be a load of psychology at play in terms of whether you are successful and how your anger management works on that basis. But getting, not losing focus and keeping going, I suppose there are benefits to that.
Yeah, well, actually, probably just step back a bit. What kind of tasks do you think you'd be doing where you couldn't leave to eat?
Literally anything, as soon as I'm doing. So what we're talking about here is like building websites, so it's those kind of tasks. So it might be a simple case of let's not get into the whole I've promised thing, but I'm building a website and I can't do it until it's done. Or it might be that I'm wrangling with, I don't know, some sort of page template or something, and it's not putting out what I want, or I cannot figure out the CSS for this particular thing to make it look how I want. And whether that takes 3 minutes, ka-ching, fabulous, I can step away from that one, or it might take several hours where you're just banging your head against the wall and nothing seems to be working. So it's those kind of things, really. But it could literally be the whole website, or it could be a small little task. Now, obviously, if it's like a whole website, I'm not naive enough to sort of keep going for like 48 hours with no sleep and no food. At some point, I have to break off. But it does kind of it does annoy is the wrong word. It irks me that I have to step away from it and I haven't finished it.
Yeah, but do you know what? I mean, that's Chantel Edward Betsy who said she's the same as you, and that's why she's got her one-day model, isn't it? Her one-day builds model, because it's just perfect for that kind of mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's basically when I've set my mind to something. So as soon as I've decided that this is the thing that I'm going to concentrate on, that's the one thing that I want to do, and I find it really difficult to kind of break off and do a bit of something else. So, as an example, we've all met people, and there's people very close to me in my life who have completely different capabilities in this regard. They can do a quarter of one task, go and do 10 minutes on something else, 15 minutes on something else, then come back to the quarter finished task and do another 8 minutes, and it all works. And I just can't do that. And it's a bit like when I was a kid. I could never, ever not finish a book before I started another one. I just had to finish the book that I'd already begun, even if I wasn't enjoying it, which is ridiculous. Just so that I could say, "Oh, I've done that one. Right, great. Now, new book." Found it very difficult to break off halfway through, and the idea of having 2 or 3 books on the go at once. Oh no! Oh no!
Do you that? Do you know? I was just thinking about building sites. So if you're having to do the design yourself, would you find that easier to break away from? Because I would.
This might speak to another topic which we're going to record for another day. If it's something that I'm capable of, I think, but that this leads to the I suppose this leads to the irking, the irkiness, if that's a word. If I'm not really very good at doing it, that presents all sorts of other problems, which we probably won't go into now. But things like design, I've long since learned that that's a fruitless task for me to get involved in. So that's best left to somebody else, frankly.
But you do some of it, though.
A little bit. But yeah. I know my limitations, so I've definitely, you raise the bar for yourself in certain areas, don't you? And probably lower the bar in other areas. And so in that case, the bar is pretty low. So I'm happy with that.
No, I was just thinking, I'm the same as you in the sense that if there's a kind of problem or I need to get that job finished and I don't know how long it's going to take, then I can't kind of leave it, and that really annoys me. So I almost need to start that on a day where I know I don't have something going on or I daren't start it. But, it's interesting. I have to do some of the design myself. And because I'm not particularly good at it, and because of the fact that I think it's usually improved by stepping away and looking at it again, I can walk away from that, even though it's not working for me. Do you know what I mean? I'm moving stuff around. Things aren't looking right. I can get away with the fact that I know I need to come back to this one later.
Oh, I see. So if it's something that you have categorized as David Walmsley is good at this, then you want to that will force you to stick with it until the bitter end. Whereas if it's something that you've already decided you're not so good at this is not your area of strength, that might be something which you're more inclined to be able to half finish and then come back to it later. Okay, that's interesting.
I think so. No, I think it's that. I think it's when it's a problem that I should be able to solve, or get done in a certain time. Then I'm dogged. I'm going to stick with it. Eat like you.
I think timing is a really crucial one in here, because judging the amount of time that something takes can directly impact upon when you begin it and how important that is. So, as an example, if I judge that a task is only going to take me an hour, then I'm really happy to begin that at any point, because I know that I can give an hour here or give an hour there, whatever. I've got time in the day for that. But if it's a 2-day task or like a whole website, let's say, that's fraught with difficulty for me, because I really struggle at, let's say, for example, it's 5:00, and in my house that would be like a traditional time to put everything down and let's all gather together and eat, with my family. I find the sort of anxiety levels going up as it approaches 5:00 because it's not done. And of course I knew it was never going to get done. This task was way bigger but I still feel that, and I don't know what it is. And then, inevitably 5:00 rolls over and there I am, I'll be another minute, just a minute, I'll just be a minute, just be another minute. And, that's ridiculous.
I know this. I know when I disappoint my wife because I'm stuck on something and she's expecting that we'll go off and do something else. And I feel that pressure there. And I've learned not to say something like, I'm doing this for us, don't you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a whole bank of things that you shouldn't say. There's another episode right there. But that's interesting that you behave in the same way as me. And as that time approaches and you know that you've got to do the other thing, I'm wondering, sort of sending this message out to everybody that's listening to this, I'm wondering what kind of emotions we experience when this happens. You haven't finished something. In my case, I don't think I get angry. I just sort of get a bit, I get a little bit tense. It's sort of like a tension feeling. I certainly wouldn't describe it as anything particularly uncomfortable or something that I can't deal with. And honestly, the minute I walk out the door of my office, it's kind of forgotten. But actually taking my fingers, my cold, dead fingers off the keyboard and actually getting out the chair, that's the thing that I can't seem to manage. I just want to keep going until it's done. Don't know what it is. Deeply weird psychology we've both got, David.
Yeah, I know, but you know, there's Sarah Jackson. She said about she's okay once she has difficulty getting started, but once she's in the zone, and I think that's where I'm at, the zone. And it's when something's creeping into my zone and dragging me out of it when I'm in it. That's where I get the anxiety.
Okay.
Is that maybe?
Yeah.
Do you think that's it?
Yeah. Well, certainly, you know, there are certain tasks which I don't enjoy as much as others. And that's in all walks of life, you know, in every aspect of my life, not necessarily anything to do with the web. And yeah, I would definitely say that if you're enjoying something, then you are far more likely, aren't you, to just sort of have that mentality of, I want to keep going, I want to keep going, I want to keep going. And I don't honestly recognize that at the time. I don't think I'm not consciously thinking, oh, I'm really enjoying this, so I'm going to keep going. It is far more about the you know, the finish line for me. But I get that would be important.
But do you think you just lose all sense of everything around you and time?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, that's true. I mean, I can literally. I mean. So I'm working on a computer, and obviously, whether you're on a Windows machine or a Mac or whatever, there's a clock. But even that, I can absolutely not see that for hours and hours on end, and I will look up and suddenly think, "Wow, that's 5 hours. Where did that even go?" And I have to set, because of the fact that I have family and I have responsibilities for picking people up from school and things like that. I have to set alarms like all over the place to make sure that I don't miss it. So just, this is ridiculous, but I'm going to let you into it. So I have to collect my child, and I have to leave the house at 3:00. If I don't leave at 3, there's a problem. And so I have, this is shameful. I have email alerts to let me know that it's getting close to 3, because I quite often check in on email. I also have 2 physical alarms, like noises, 2 separate ones, because I'm so inclined to literally like silence one and then forget that I've silenced it. So another one comes on, and if that one comes on, I'm thinking, oh, stop, go and get your son from school. Oh dear.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of like my wife, actually. She's a big alarm setter. She sets alarms to remind her about the alarm that's coming up.
That's it. That's exactly it. So I've got backups all over the place, and that's just because I know that I can absolutely go through the day and not realize what the time is. Totally possible. What about deadlines, though? Maura Cohen speaks about deadlines. She says that they're the sort of the way that she manages things. You know, deadlines keep her in check. If there's no deadline, she says that she goes off on a tangent and finds a whole variety of ways to sort of occupy her time, you know, that aren't productive. How about you with that?
Yeah.
Do deadlines work?
Yeah, I want to know about Moore's deadlines, where they're self-imposed ones. Self-imposed ones, absolutely useless. I'll just ignore them. You told me earlier about what you do with your own deadlines.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've got this to-do list. God, I'm really sounding ridiculous, aren't I? But I've got a to-do list, and basically most of those tasks I just move to the next day each day, because they're self-imposed. And I can move them wherever I like. Frankly, I could move them to next year, but I move them each morning to the next day, and then occasionally I'll cherry pick one of them out and get it done. So in a sense, there's absolutely no point in having that to-do list, but that's what I do. And it just sort of keeps them bubbling up in my mind. Oh, yeah, that would be a good thing to do. I would like to achieve that. But self-imposed deadlines, no good. Client-imposed deadlines, on the other hand, very good. Yeah. They work very effectively for me, and you spoke about that as well. You feel that there's more weight, more importance, and it's more likely to be done if you feel like you're letting another human being down.
Yeah, absolutely. Sacrosanct for me. They're just absolutely. If I said I'm going to do this for this person on this time, I absolutely hold by that, because I used to manage people, and they had to do that deal for me. So I kind of set that discipline in myself, and I can't get rid of it. So, they would waste my time if they didn't appear at the time that we planned to meet, and it would really annoy me and I couldn't do my job. So it's carried through life. So that's true. But my own self-imposed, or if I said some vague idea about putting, say, some content out in January, I would just let that slip, because I know there wouldn't be one person expected to see it.
So is it very much about sort of disappointment? It's about literally letting an individual down, and that what this person, like, is it important that you've met them before in any way? So let's say, for example, that you said to somebody you'll get a proposal to them by a particular date, and yet you've never met them, you don't really know them. Would that be important, or is it the fact that you know them, you've got an acquaintance with them, they've become like a friend? Or
no, I think it would be more the business side of things. So I want to treat others the way I want to be treated myself, and it'd be really, really keen for them to respect my time. So that's how I would view it.
Okay.
About setting this kind of deal about respecting each other's time.
Yeah, and I think I would imagine that's the case for most people. Otherwise, you wouldn't get a fat lot done in life. But self-imposed deadlines don't really work for me, whereas client deadlines really do. And I'm a lot like you, interestingly, in that regard. I really, really try to stick to those things. So if I've promised something to a particular person for a particular time, whether that's showing up for a meeting or making a phone call at a particular time or doing whatever it might be, I don't like it when people don't respect that, in reverse toward me. So I try to do that as well. Definitely. Yeah.
It's interesting, because that I didn't realize until just now that the fact that why that's important to me is just because I literally had to discipline people for not making deadlines. So you can't do that and not do it yourself, can you?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, I've never really been in that position, but I think that's an important distinction to make. Although I think I had that as a child. I do remember being quite punctilious. Is that a word? I think it is. And showing up, and a lot of my friends much more laissez-faire about it. And back in the day when there was no mobile phones, if you said you were going to go somewhere and you're waiting for 45 minutes for a mate who decides to rock up a bit later, then that can be the cause of much tension, shall we say. And I remember disciplining my friends who took it with different amounts of they took it on the chin or they didn't. But I remember thinking, no, but we agreed. We said that we'd be here at 3:45 and it's now 4:30. Why have you done this to me? Greatly aggrieved. What's Rachel saying? Rachel Siago, I'm going to say, is her name. She says that she works better under pressure. What about you?
Yeah, true. But maybe that I mentioned to you earlier that it just scares me, pressure now. I seem to avoid it at all costs because I did work well under pressure, and I worked too long before and kind of lost what life was about by working quite well and doing too much work. So now I'm really scared of pressure. So I have to get the right balance, but definitely, yeah, it works for me.
I wonder though if the pressure at some point. Now, obviously, you and I are probably not ones to talk too much about real pressure because we both got lives. We're freelance. Everything seems to be all right, but a proper degree of pressure, should we say, or a degree of pressure which becomes debilitating, I suppose, is the exact opposite. It'll cause you to sort of shut down and be unable to move. So whilst pressure can be a good thing, a manageable amount of pressure, which is, I expect, what Rachel's talking about. There's something in the distance and the time pressure is working against me, or there's whatever it might be, that motivates you. I think the opposite is also true, in that too much pressure completely debilitates you and makes you unable to work, and get started and pick out the important tasks and have perspective. So I think that works possibly in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think money pressure, if you're doing your work, is a really tricky one to work to, isn't it? Because then your focus goes off the work. Particularly, you're just fearful, aren't you, rather than feeling under pressure. But I think I don't know. There's a certain amount of pressure that used to be good for me for work. It was like they were like challenges in that pressure. It was almost like I would set challenges. They came with a certain amount of pressure to deliver. I could have easily failed, and it would have been okay. but that kind of pressure made me want to do more, you know?
Yeah, no, I understand. I think this is a really difficult one, actually, the whole pressure thing, because it's probably at the root of a lot of what we're talking about, and it does very much depend on whether that pressure is overwhelming, or as you just described it, if it's a challenge. Now, challenging pressure can be fun, can't it? It's just, I've got this thing to do, and I'm sure I can do it, as opposed to, your boss is being completely unreasonable and giving you far too many things to do and expecting you to do it by tomorrow. And that pressure is awful.
Yeah. I think another point on here that I really like, because it's so true, probably of everybody as well, but Matthew Granite's one about the fact that he seems to get fixated on the one project that is least urgent. And
yes.
Gosh, so much do I do that.
Well, you made a nice comment earlier before we started recording about when you were working as a student and how that worked out. You should share that, because I think that's good.
Yeah, well, I'm always reminded of the fact that when I had to get my final dissertation in at uni, that was the time that my flat had never been cleaner. Excuse me, my throat is going. But I just found all of these little tasks to do that was so urgent. And you shared something as well. You should share that as well.
Well, it's not a personal story, but it was a story. I do remember there's a comedian in the UK who's still with us, I believe. He's probably getting on a bit now. Ben Elton. And he was doing his comedy routine, and it was about this exact thing, the pressure of getting something done as a student, handing in an essay or whatever it might have been. And he said that that article about the Queen Mother suddenly became absolutely essential reading, whereas the task which actually needed to be done was not so much. And so for you, it's the exact same thing, tidying the flat, getting the work done. Which should I do? Oh, I know what, I'll just do 5 minutes of tidying up. And I suppose that must come from like the desire to do the task, whether or not you're enjoying it, but also, how achievable that task is. And maybe going back to what we were talking about a minute ago about the sort of anxiety of the pressure involved, all of those things probably are a cocktail of whether you can get started. But I'm sure all of us can identify with this thing of finding 1,000 little jobs to do as opposed to the one really quite important job which needs doing. I bet we've all done that over and over again.
Yeah. And we were talking before about this is a tricky one, but I'd love to know if there's folks who are listening who were raised in the East rather than the West, because I think, when you do that, you take something less important. It's because you feel like you want to have achieved something. So you're doing some work. So, the West is very much time is money, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've got that connection together. So you feel like you want to have done something with your time that's productive, but you might not be feeling it for the big job. And I just wonder if if that's just a Western hang-up to work like that.
Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, presumably there's varying degrees of that, the cultural significance of getting work done in different countries. I mean, obviously you will have more experience of that than I have because you live in different countries quite a lot of the time. But I guess you're not working in offices, so having an insight into that. But it would be interesting if there's anybody listening to this who is not from, in inverted commas, the West, and they've got if none of this speaks to you and you're thinking, what are they on about? This is bizarre. We have such a different approach than you do. I'd be really interested to know, because I'm sure there's something at play culturally.
Yeah, I think so. I think I've always known it, and I can see it in action. And I've changed a little bit with being out in the East, and particularly in India. That we know that time is often considered as more of an imperialist concept, something to kind of work against and work more on kind of families. You were mentioning this as well about working together that way, and you don't put everything to a time in that way. You give the time that's needed to the people that you're with, which is entirely different, isn't it, from the West?
Yeah.
And it just makes me think, well, maybe all of our anxieties are around this efficiency thing, which we're obsessed with in the West, using our time effectively and making more money.
Yeah, And I wonder if there is something in that. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's some component of that. The way that you've been brought up, the way that you've been raised, the culture, the society that you live in, and so on. But I don't really have a great deal of insight into that. So I genuinely would be really interested to know, if the way that you manage your tasks, your work, your environment, whatever, is significantly influenced by the culture that you live in.
Yeah.
Have we missed any of those comments out? Laurie Berkovitz said she didn't really want to pick any of my three options because for her the actual task itself. Now we have mentioned this already, I suppose. The actual task itself creates whether she wants to get it done or whether she can stick at it or not. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true. Just about everybody. You pick and choose the tasks. I just wonder if I'm on the end of a spectrum here, and once I've started something, for some reason that becomes important, whereas maybe not so for other people. Different. We're all different. And then you've written out in our show notes, you've written out some things that you believe may be universal. Should we go through those because they're interesting?
Yeah. Well, the first one was just that I think we probably all feel that we wasted too much time and not prioritized our task because just the thing that was mentioned in earlier. But this is what I'd like to be challenged. The time is money kind of idea. So I think that's what puts us under this pressure. I'd be really interested to see if people don't have these anxieties.
Yeah,
maybe
I wonder if there's literally anybody who feels that they manage their time amazingly effectively. Actually looks at themselves, stares at themselves really introspectively and said, "No, I'm really good at it. I'm excellent at managing my time. I have a real great balance on the importance, which tasks are important, when to stop work, and all of that." I don't know. Maybe there are people who have that feeling, but clearly it's not me or you.
No. Well, the second point I actually put down here is that I think at some point we all think we have a system that nails it until we revert back to number one, which is the feeling we don't do enough. I just think we have these moments when we think we've got something, don't we, that's going to work.
Yeah. I have fleeting glimpses of being very efficient and managing my tasks really well, and getting to the end of a particular day thinking, oh yeah, that went really well. Everything that I sort of decided I was going to do, wrote down that I was going to do, whatever your system is, I achieved it, and I feel very good about myself. And then the next day I try to replicate it and it doesn't work.
Exactly. The next one I put was the balance of easy and hard tasks, and that we probably need the easy tasks to feel like we're doing something without too much pain, like shame you again with your loading up of all your plugins individually to a new build.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I know that this is appalling to absolutely everybody, but that's what I do.
Do you know? You mentioned that, and I love what you said about that because it was that opened my eyes. Really, you said that it's like some of the other things you do in life, which you repeat, which you enjoy doing.
Yeah. So just to give context, when I start a new build, I always start it from scratch, and I go to WordPress.org and I down this again. Forgive me, I know everybody thinks this is ridiculous. Go to WordPress.org, download the tarball, untar it. Log in, set up the usernames and passwords, delete the sample posts and whatnot, set up the blog, all the stuff that everybody knows that he's doing. And I do it all, and I do it manually, and I rather enjoy it. And I think it's the analogy that I made was it's a bit like, why do you go back to the same restaurant? You don't go back because it's different. You go back to the same restaurant and, we've all done it. We eat the same plate of food that we had last time we went because you enjoyed it. And there is a simple pleasure for me. I can't explain it. I just like repetitive tasks, I suppose. There's some pleasure in the repetitive nature of that task, and I quite enjoy it, sadly.
No, there is something we do like repetition. It's we like rocking. We rock babies, don't we? We like these patterns.
Yeah, you think of the amount of things that you repeat on a daily basis. It's probably extraordinary. Just to the the routine of getting dressed. I expect there's a certain routine in the way that you do that and the way that you prepare your food and the places that you put things in the house. So there's just repetition all over your life. And unless you're like supremely chaotic, in which case maybe there's none. But that is a repetitive task. I rather enjoy it. I kind of get some sort of cathartic pleasure from doing all those things. And I know it's not efficient. I realise that. It's terribly inefficient, but it only takes me 15 minutes and I like it. So there.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I kind of like what you said about it, because it just reminds you that we've got to enjoy the work, and we've got to be healthy with it. So why not? We are obsessed, aren't we, with efficiency all the time?
Oh, it's really, a conversation like this brings that out. It doesn't really occur to me in my daily life that the society and the culture that I live in is obsessed with efficiency. But having a chat like this with you kind of really does bring it out and make me feel, yes, we are. And sometimes efficiency has to be replaced with other things, and I don't know what those other things are, but things like compassion, empathy, relaxation, downtime, whatever it might be. I think you need aspects of those, and if efficiency is all that we've got, then life feels a bit like an automata. It just feels like everything is robotic, and that's probably not healthy for us.
Yeah, absolutely. The other point of that one was the easy task. We probably need a combination of that and harder tasks, which I wrote. It's so stupid what I wrote there, to stop the boredom of our existence, but really just to feel like we've really moved on and done something, accomplished something. We need something hard, don't we, that challenges us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's true. It was a very young age that I decided that I didn't want to do a job which was ultimately repetitive. I know we just talked about the pleasure in repetitive tasks, but I think probably that's an escape from the non-repetitive stuff that we've got to do all the time. And, I decided early that I was going to try quite hard at school so that I didn't end up in a job where there was no variation and every day was identical to the last one. And I think you're right. I think it is nice to have things which aren't repetitive as well.
Did I ever mention before about, I think he's called Daniel Pink. He does a book, I think it's on motivation, and he did lots of research. He advises companies because his works kind of found out that really money wasn't an incentive to work beyond kind of a rudimentary jobs. What people needed all the time was to feel that they had some kind of control over their work, but that they were challenging themselves and learning something new. They needed that in their work. Yeah. And this seemed to go across the board. So it seemed to be a universal. Again, probably he was only dealing with a Western sample of people. But it's interesting. I think it's Daniel Pink. Really interesting work. Just that money doesn't come into it. People need these challenges.
Yeah,
autonomy.
I can't really speak to the sort of psychology of that or the data that backs any of that up, but that feels right to me. It feels it does feel nice when you have learnt something. I was saying to you earlier before we recorded this that I don't really feel these days that I'm on a massive purposeful journey to learn a load of new stuff. When I go back 20 years, and I was always consuming new things, and I was always keen to keep up with the latest thing. And I think now that I've reached a certain age, and the arthritis has begun to set in, and so on and so forth. Less of that. I don't feel the importance of learning quite so much, but I do enjoy it when I have figured something out and I've learned something new. But I'm not buying the books. I'm not signing up for the complex courses on how to do this, that, and the other anymore. Not so much, anyway. Yeah,
but I challenge that a little bit because you're doing a lot of new things, but you're not needing a book to do them.
Yeah, I think that's true. There's a lot of new things in my life. Podcasting was quite new to me, and all of those kind of things, and managing a podcast and trying to grow it and those kind of things. But I think the learning there is more osmosis than it is bookish. So I don't find myself reading articles about how to do this. I just go through it myself and try to figure it out, successfully or otherwise. And so definitely there's learning going on, but I don't go out and sort of study it. I don't even know if there's a place where you can study things like podcasting or things like that. Probably there is, but I don't know about it.
Yeah, it's
and what about you though? Do you still like hanker to learn new things? Do you go out and sign up for courses and whatnot?
No, it's really interesting. Just not for a long, long time. And then when I did, they tended to be really short courses that I would buy, or very short books that would just teach me one particular thing. But then, I say this, but when you think about it, there's so much free stuff that there's always an article that I feel I need to read.
Yeah.
So I don't really know.
But also, interestingly, you put out content, and although you may not regard it as, like mind-bendingly difficult to learn, you're constantly at the cutting edge of, let's say, for example, Beaver Builder. You're always putting out tutorials so that people can learn from your experience. So in some way, you are interested in the process of learning, or maybe more teaching.
Yeah, that's interesting, because everything that I've put out that's gone with videos really has come out of the fact that I've needed to learn that thing. So I just then turn it into a video of what I've just learned. Right. So, and that's how it's worked. So I guess there's a document of it's. My videos are slowed down, so it probably shows you that my learning is slowed down as well. But
it's the arthritis setting in.
Yeah, it is. There was a point, actually, we moved on a bit, but going back to what I thought was key behind all the tasks was having purpose, because I must say I'm having a bit of a break in a way from doing lots of work, and I've lost my way a little bit in terms of getting tasks done, and I get annoyed with myself. But I think it's just because of the fact that earlier I had a real vision, an overall purpose of why I was doing tasks. So they were working, even if they were tedious, they were working towards something, so they were manageable. Now, while I'm changing things, I'm struggling with tasks.
I think this is truly important, well, for a lot of people, whether there's an overall aim, a target, something in life that you're aiming for, and it might be a financial thing, you need to grow the business to buy the house, or it might be, you need to finish this product so you can get it out there, or whatever it is. I'm sure that's enormously important. And obviously, in your case, things have been changed around a little bit, so that purpose has been sort of redefined or lost temporarily, or whatever it is. So I think tasks become more difficult to justify if you can't see where they're going and what the point is. And I actually think that this speaks to a lot of people's frustration with their work. They can't see the point in it. And if you can't really see the point in it, sure enough, that's fine. There's a significant proportion of the population, I'm sure, who will happily do the work just because the purpose is the cash, the pay slip at the end of the month, and that's fine. That's why I'm doing it. I'm not really interested in its deeper purpose. But I think it is good to have a handle on that and to know why you're doing things, to have a goal and all of those kind of things. But again, me and you, we're probably not the best to talk about that, but I think it's important, and I'm sure there's some sort of deep psychological reason for that again, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, all the efficiency people will talk about that kind of need to have an aim or a goal, which almost, when somebody says something like that, kind of puts me off setting one. But I did. I remember in life, and this was key, when I needed to leave my job and move around the world and stuff, and I needed to do this, make websites for a living. I knew I wasn't going to have enough money. But we managed to kind of inconvenience ourselves all the time saving money, because we had this vision of us being somewhere else in the sun and it really helped. And everything that we needed to do that was a bit painful to save money just turned into a game towards that goal.
Right.
So the whole outlook to it. So I do think it's really quite important, isn't it? If you can kind of turn boring tasks into something that you can see as just part of a game or a challenge.
Yeah,
we like challenges towards that bigger aim.
Gamification of things. Yeah, I think this is an area where there are certain jobs I think which would have always been closed off to me because of this purpose reason. Certain jobs that I didn't. So this is going back to me being a kid again and thinking about what I wanted to do. There were just certain things that I thought I really don't want to ever be involved in that, because I just don't see the point in it. I can't see that, forgive me, selling dog food or something wouldn't be purposeful enough. So I ruled those things out. So I think that one, as you so rightly made it bold on our show notes, is really important.
Yeah. So, we're getting close to the end. There are a few tasks we were touching on that could trip us up. Maybe.
Yeah, let's go through them fairly quickly.
Yeah, so learning tasks. We need to do some learning. And I just wonder, that's a tricky one because we kind of do it on the hoof. I do anyway. But I just wonder if people or anybody does actually set time aside for that. I'll tell you one thing. This is the thing about courses. You said, do you do them? The really good courses out there that I need to invest money and my time in, I put off because it's too big a time and I think I should be doing something else.
Yeah. I don't, like I said, I've kind of stopped allocating time, a great deal of time in my life to learn things. No, I've kind of stopped. But I think if you're trying to go from A to B, trying to change things up a little bit, I think it's important to make time for the task of learning. Very important. I don't feel that I need to learn anything. Again, excuse me, that's not what I meant to say. It kind of feels like there's nothing that I want to learn at the moment. So that's why that's been put off. But in the past, like I said, I would consume loads of that stuff.
Yeah. No, I can imagine it getting in the way, though, learning when I guess, you're going to take on certain amounts of jobs or something or expand yourself, then you probably, let's say you need some JavaScript skills that you don't have.
Yeah.
And, you're going to have to put a load of time aside. And I can see the anxiety. I've felt that before, the anxiety building up of the fact that actually I need to allocate some time for learning a task, so I don't do it.
No. Well, yeah, there you go. Interesting. So, what's this next one you've got? You've got new products. What were you meaning by that?
Oh, just the fact that there's always something that we, I guess, should be looking at because things are always changing. There's always ways to extend and make our business better. So we need to put some time aside to look at the new stuff that's coming out.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah, that's it. Just wonder, because we struggle with this, don't we? Because it's, again, shiny objects. We talked about this before. Should we be calendarizing this kind of thing? Is that a word?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So literally blocking off space in the week to, the first one, learn new things, tasks of learning new information, new procedures, whatever, but also put actual calendar time aside for exploring new WordPressy, in this case, products.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have occurred to me to set time aside to do that, but that's really interesting because I expect that if we all added up our combined time frittered away looking at this stuff, we'd probably be appalled. But again, gets back to the efficiency thing that we're so obsessed with. Maybe that's maybe that's a meaningful frittering of time as opposed to a wasteful use of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and of course, we better skip over this one quickly. There's the social networking side of life, isn't there, in our business? We need to do a bit of that. And I don't know whether that's classed as business time, as task, whether people set that as it, or whether they consider it as downtime
we're all on a different journey there, aren't we? Some of us have really need to be involved in social networks, or we love it, or we're grappling with the whole, I am overusing this, it is wasting my time, that I could be doing more productive things. And you'll only, I guess, we'll all know where we are and what levels of guilt we need to feel about that.
Yeah, I'm guessing you're good with this next one. The other thing that's easy to ignore as tasks is money stuff.
Yeah,
boring money stuff.
What do you mean by that?
Well, just making sure that you've got the money in from clients who owe you, or that you're just keeping your accounts ready.
Oh, I see.
For the end of the year, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that kind of stuff I've pretty much got dialed in. My procedures work for me, and following up doesn't happen too often. I usually get paid, so I'm not wasting a lot of time. I've got SaaS products and I've got self-hosted products which take care of that side of stuff for me, and with this new advent of app-based banking, that makes it even easier on for me. So yeah, that side of stuff I'm not really worrying about too much.
There was a guy in one of the other groups who he just shared how much money he realized he'd kind of lost through not chasing up what clients owed them. I mean, it was more than I was earning in a year.
Wow.
I'm thinking about half a year. And
wow.
It was like, wow, yeah. It's just like my brother, who's terrible with this kind of stuff. So engrossed in the tasks that he needs to do on a daily basis in running his business that he really nearly tripped himself up and
just forgot to follow up the money.
Yeah.
No, I'm not overwhelmed with the number of financial leads that I need to keep my hands on. It's just not that many. So it's easy, really. And I've got it all on one screen, if you like. So, yeah, there's nothing there. But I can imagine it would. And that's why we employ accountants. And that's why we have payroll staff and all that kind of stuff, isn't it? Because those tasks simply can't be managed at scale by one person.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are just other tasks that that thrown in. We've got so many things to do. So customer service stuff, following up on old customers, checking that they're okay. These are all things that we end up doing these days, particularly when we have care plans and stuff, which can easily get skipped. And just generally looking into the future of our industry. Just keeping our eye out on the aim of our business. That's something that we also need to find. It's a task, isn't it, in a way of some kind.
I know what you mean. You could spend your whole life doing the customer service thing and worrying about the future of the industry. There's, I suppose at some point you've just got to decide which parts of the calendar it's going to occupy. And by that, I mean how much time you can actually use on it. But not something I've got a great deal of time for, shall we say.
Yeah, and by the time you look into this, you get overwhelmed and start asking the question, which was ours, are we ever happy with the tasks that we manage?
Well, pretty clearly, the answer for both you and I is a big fat no, isn't it? We think we're doing all right with the way we manage some of it, and we're hopeless at the way we manage much of it.
But we're happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think happiness is an important measure of all of this stuff. And if the tasks are getting you down, maybe it's time to rethink.
So it's time to say good night, Gracie.
Yes, good night, Gracie. Thank you for listening. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed that. Perhaps you got something out of it. If you did, please head over to either the Facebook group or the comments section on the post on the WordPress website and let us know what your thoughts were. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, maybe some of that rung a bell and you thought, yeah, I approach my tasks in exactly the same way as you. Either way, I hope that you enjoyed it. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by WP and Up. 1 in 4 of us will be directly affected by mental health-related illness. WP and Up supports and promotes positive mental health within the WordPress community. This is achieved through mentorship, events, training and counselling. Please help enable WP and Up by visiting wpandup.org/give. Okay, perhaps we'll see you next Thursday for another podcast. Perhaps we'll see you on Monday. There's 2 things that we do on a Monday. The first one is that we do I put out the audio WordPress news from the previous week. That comes out very early in the morning in the UK. But also at 2 p.m. UK time in the Facebook group, so that's wpbuilds.com/Facebook, we get together with some special guests from our community and we talk about that WordPress news live, and you can join in and comment with us and make your opinions felt. Right, there is nothing else for me to say except Leo Mindel. Here is some short cheesy music.